Good morning. Hopefully everybody's doing good. Today's the day we're gonna actually tackle this beast. So you've worked on the different documents. You've tried to provide some context for maybe where those documents are coming from. You've came up with a thesis statement. So today's the day you're gonna put it all together. I've worked long and hard on creating an answer sheet that you can write your DBQ on. It took me a long time to do this. I had a different font at one point. At one point it was bigger. Wasn't bold at the beginning. But I came up with this wonderful document for you to write your DBQ answer on. That is shared in the April 20th through 24th folder. When you're done, you can submit that to me. Don't do it before Friday, though, because we're going to use what you write for Friday. Couple of things before you start. I would like you... the due date's technically like Friday night. I would like you to try to get this one done Thursday because the little quiz I'm going to have you do is going to have to do with the DBQ that you wrote. So you're going to have to utilize that. The big written document, you're going to have to use the big written document to do the quiz on Friday. So if you can get that done Thursday, that would be outstanding. That would really help you out. If not, then you're just going to do the quiz a little bit later. That's okay. But you got to really do the written DBQ first to do the little quiz. There's a couple of things. When you write yours for AP, you're going to have 45 minutes to write your DBQ. So that includes like reading the 5 sources they're going to give you. Remember, there's only 5 on yours. You're going to have to read the 5. So you're going to have to read those 5 sources, figure out which ones you want to use, all that thing. You've already done all that stuff. So what I'm telling you for this for practice is when you type up your DBQ, I would put yourself on the clock. See how long it takes you. See if you can do this in 30 minutes. Like I would say, let's try to shoot for 30 minutes. If you can do that, if you can do it within 30 minutes, I think that would be outstanding. It's not for a grade. It's really kind of be more completion. I'm going to look at it and say like, oh my gosh, Sam, you were right on point. I really like what you did with, your thesis statement was perfect. This was perfect. You need to maybe a little work on this. So I'm going to give you some pointers potentially. And then, yeah, I'm going to give you some pointers, but I'm not going to give you like, oh, you failed this or you got an A. Like let's worry about like just practicing and kind of trying to get comfortable with it first. Okay. So you are going to write it, and I would like you to put yourself, like I said, on a clock, for sure. When you write again, because you're writing this on a time limit, it's not about getting things perfect. Now, you might have an opportunity to go back and maybe edit what you've written, but it's a little bit of thinking up and kind of plotting out your response and then kind of going at it and kind of getting that all on the page, and then you can kind of work with it from there. This document, which I've linked also in the April 20th through 24th folder, is a simplified version of this document that I also have in the April 20th through 24th folder. I've tried to kind of explain it because I think that one was a little confusing. So we're trying to I want you to know what this simplified DBQ really is all about. Let's start out with a thesis statement. We've kind of talked about this. If you don't remember, let's go over it really quick. Thesis statement's going to give you 1 point. There's 10 total points. That's going to give you 1 point. The way you're going to get your point is you have to make some sort of argument. Don't just restate the prompt. If the prompt is, why is George Washington the greatest president of all time? If you said, in my opinion, George Washington is the greatest president of all time, you're just restating the prompt. Your argument would have to be George Washington is the greatest president of all time because he was, as the very first president, he had to establish so many precedents and make so many decisions that would carry on throughout history that makes him the greatest or something. You're going to have some sort of claim, some sort of argument that you're going to attach all your evidence to that's going to prove your arguments right. So in the case of the British, it might be, and I'm guessing most all your thesis statements are going to be pretty similar. Between 1763 and 1784, there was pretty significant change of attitude towards the British, stemming, starting out as just a little bit like irritated at the British to actual thoughts of independence. That's what I would think. It's going to be some variation of that. Well, my guess. So thesis statement's 1 point. Contextualization. I think some people have questions on this. That is 1 point. It's describing a broader historical context relevant to your prompt. So, for example, if in your opening paragraph you talked about how the colonists went from just having a minor disagreement with the British to all of a sudden now there's people that really passionately want to break free and get their independence. Well, where do we come from? Before 1763, what was it like? And maybe a way to get this point would be to talk about Britain was involved in the French-Indian War for the 10 years prior to this. They were worried about the war with France, so they left kind of the colonists on their own, and the colonists were governing themselves and making their own decisions. And once the French-Indian War ended, Great Britain realized they needed some money. And they figured the best way to get that was to tax the colonists. And they did so without asking the colonists' opinions on this. Hence where the initial problems was and where things started to deteriorate. So that would give you a point for contextualization. You're talking about the time period before where we came from. You also could talk about kind of where we were going afterwards, that sort of thing. How does this stretch across multiple time periods? That's going to get you a point. The use of evidence is worth 5 of the 10 points. You've got to use 4 of the 5 documents. Now, in this case, there's obviously 7 documents present. I'm only asking that you use 4, just to kind of get used to the way we're going to write them. Normally, you'd have to use more than that. Since it's an abbreviated DBQ, we're going to only have to do 4 of 5. Like I told somebody earlier today, there's nobody that says you cannot utilize all 5 documents. What I will tell you when they score you on the AP test, they do not score things that are wrong per se. Let me take that back. They will kind of mark you down if you start making wars up. If you said in World War III, this is what happened, or if they start making things up like that, yeah, they're probably going to take some points off, or it's not going to help you. But if you utilize all 5 of the documents and don't do a good job connecting it on, say, one of them, that just kind of falls by the wayside. And if the other 4 you kind of connect to your argument, great. Now, I wouldn't necessarily jam them in if you don't feel like you could utilize them. On the question we're doing right now, the stuff about I think document number 6 about the money. I have a hard time in the essay that I would write. I feel like that one doesn't fit what I'm going for. I don't know if I would be able to use that one. But if you feel like you can use all 5, might not be the worst idea to use a 5th one to see if, worst comes to worst, that'll get you the point. Like I said, you don't have to, though. So you must, to get the point, you have to not just say what the document means, but here's kind of the key part. You have to connect how they support your argument. So if you utilize document number 3, the one about Samuel Adams, and how you don't have to love where, you don't have to stay in a place if you don't love it, you don't love what's kind of going on. You can kind of strive for, and if they feel like they're persecuting you religiously or economically or politically, you can leave. In essence, what he's saying is the British could leave too. So you can push to a more favorable circumstance. You would have to not just say that's what it means, but how does that connect to your argument? So you to connect it, you're going to show that this is clearly showing that more people are becoming passionate about becoming independent. They're starting to actually say it out loud. Some people maybe were thinking it, but this is kind of a sign that some are getting just beyond the we're irritated with the one thing you did. Now it's just a couple things, it's multiple things that you've done to make me want to say let's end it. Going back to the idea of breaking up with somebody, I don't want to belabor this point, and it wasn't just a funny joke. For some reason, this makes sense to me in my head. You wouldn't break up with somebody for losing the remote control. That's not why I want to break up with my girlfriend. But that might start down a pattern where I say something mean about her, and then she says something mean about me back, and then I say I don't like her parents, and she says I don't like mine, and her dog's weird looking, and all of a sudden we're saying all these things, and it spirals into all these multiple issues that maybe we've had, that we went to kind of a bad place, and that's what's going to be the breakup. That's kind of what the colonists and Great Britain did. There was an incident, and then it just kind of mushroomed from there into multiple things. So you're going to make those connections. How did that get to where you want to go, and how did that support your argument. The other thing you are going to do to get points, you have to bring in 2 additional pieces of evidence. So these are things from your knowledge base. The first things that pop into my head are like the Boston Massacre, or the Boston Tea Party, or you can talk about the Sons of Liberty, or any of the other, like, you talk about the Stamp Act, but maybe like the Intolerable Acts, where they kind of shut down the Boston Harbor and dismantle the governments, the colonial governments. So you can talk about those kinds of things. What other evidence do you have from that time period that you can kind of support your argument from? And just like with the documents, you have to connect the additional piece of evidence to how they support your argument. You can't just say, like, the Boston Tea Party happened. Well, why does that? What is that showing you? What is that showing us? Okay. That's 5 points. The last 3 points, a little bit more complicated. For 2 of these points, you have to explain maybe the document's point of view. That's why I asked you those questions on the sheets, like, what are people thinking? Like, what is the historical situation? What is your audience? How is this relevant? So if we talk about like the Samuel Adams one, well, he was part of the Sons of Liberty. So that's relevant because that was a pretty anti-British, pretty pro, like, independent group. So that obviously makes sense. The point of view is clearly coming from one of, like, rallying the cause to let's become independent. Again, so for two of these points, you have to show kind of a historical view of these documents. And it really has to be just from 2 documents. So you have to really make the point of view or the historical situation. You really have to make that connection on only 2 of the 4 documents you talk about. Okay, the very last point is probably the hardest one, I think, to explain or understand. You must demonstrate a complex understanding of the historical development. That is the focus of the prompt. Example is there are multiple causes for something, a cause and effect, how issues stretch across multiple time periods. When I talked about the French and Indian War and how that affected, I think that does a lot for this last point. I almost think it gets you twice. I think that would almost fit. So you are stretching across time periods. You're kind of giving us the cause and effect. The cause was they run out of money, and that's how the Stamp Act started, and this got the whole ball of wax rolling. So I think that kind of helps. Okay, so hopefully this helps you. Go ahead, like I said, write your DBQ. Try to fit it into 30 minutes. If you have questions, feel free to email me. It might be easier to, like, Zoom in the office hours. And if you can't make the office hours, if maybe we can set up a time that we can arrange to have, like, a little, like, I can go over and help. I can, like, help you with this. If you'd want to talk about it, like, we can maybe arrange a Zoom office hour at sometime not 12:30 to 2:30. Just let me know. So, okay, so that's the only thing is just writing this DBQ, and this obviously video was kind of a monster. I didn't really mean to make it this long. The other thing I put out there on Tuesday, nobody's really said anything. For any kind of review video that you want, like if there's something you want me to make, please hit me up, and I'll try to give you a few, like, hey, I don't remember the Civil War much, or World War I, or whatever. We can, whatever the topic is, I'll try to give you maybe a little quick refresher if that's something you're interested in. Just kind of let me know what direction you want me to go in. So other than that, like, feel free to ask questions, comments, and I will definitely be talking to you. So good luck. I know you guys are going to do a great job, and let me know if you have any questions. See you guys later. Enjoy.